Video has now started. Ah, everybody's here already. Hello. Oh, hello. Look at this guy. Look at this guy. Oh, I'm tangled. Puppy needs treat. Hello. Hello, everyone. Hello, puppy. How's everybody's Friday going? Mine has a... he nibbled my finger. Happy weekend. Happy Friday. Minibik. Looks, brews and booze says hello. Well, they said hey. What? 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 No. Hey. No boof. Boof. Feeling a little sleepy. So as of Wednesday's stream, when we raided out to the Mandevilles, they gave me a bunch of shoutouts and bumped me up over. They said, hey, Sleet Reads is at 49 subscribers, our followers. Get them over that 50 mark. And I was like, I am? Am I at 49? News to me. So I've officially received the join up with the Twitch affiliate program email. But I haven't filled that info out yet. I need to give them banking information and all that. But that'll be cool, because once I do that, we'll be able to do like custom emotes and things like that for the chat. Get a, I don't know, eagles don't equal forks emote or something like that. Eagles are not forks. Yes, a magic goose, Hank. Haven't put up those fan art artworks that fell down. So yeah, that'll be fun. Get people some badges, maybe. Any big plans for the weekend? Anyone got anything fun or relaxing or exciting or emotes? Yeah, that'll be good. Farmo says more packing, yay. Yeah, our weekend isn't likely to be super. We'll have to create some fun for ourselves. Although getting the house ready to sell, like getting ready to get out of here, is kind of exciting. Looking forward to, I don't know. I'm not really looking forward to the selling process, but I am looking forward to the like shopping for a new house process. Looking at, potential new places. Oh, puppy's got itch. Making his itchy faces. Pharma says house hunting is more fun than house selling. Especially with modern technology, you don't have to go out there with a spear. It'll be only puppy's second house ever. Yeah. Yeah, again, rude. You're on camera. Caught. Yeah, Bin's only lived with us here. His first night in Canada was our first night in this house. Sprues and Boo says, my cats are so good. Ghosty heard someone talking outside and went growling through the house to alert. Yeah, Pepper doesn't like it when people are talking outside. That's when he gets noisy. He doesn't think people are allowed to exist near our house. Which, considering we live in a strata in a, decently crowded neighborhood, they're allowed to be out there. We try to remind them that, but it's been a long time since I watched Big Fish. It was a very good movie, but yeah, it's been... When did that movie come out? Because I didn't see it in theaters. 2003. So almost 20 years ago. 19 years ago. I'm sorry to say that. But yeah, apparently it came out 19 years ago. Doesn't feel like it, does it? Farmhouse did see it in theaters? Oh, I saw it on DVD. Pretty sure I saw it on DVD. Oh. Looking at the link. Eye patch lady. Yeah, so you were asking about catching up somewhere, right? Let me find... Played catch up and read what you missed from last Friday. We left off on... In my copy, page 186, or 187 technically, after Huel and Tom John went out for a night of drinking, or at least quaffing, carousing, frolicking perhaps, and were involved in a tavern brawl, and then later on their way home they saw someone getting mugged by some members of the Thieves Guild. And through some quick lawyering they worked that out. By they, I mean Tom John almost entirely. The someone being mugged was the Fool, who decided that he owed them a drink, so they all went out for another drink and ended up in a dwarf bar, where there was almost a little more trouble, but that was diffused with some quick on-the-spot acting. Which is when the Fool realized that they were involved with the theater and that he had traveled 500 miles to find them. Yeah, big fish is definitely, I don't know, a story about relationship with a father, right? And it's definitely an emotional story. I don't necessarily remember all of the plot from it, but I do remember the emotions that it brought out. Oh, puppy's gone. He vanished. I missed it. But yeah, so that's what more or less happened on Wednesday's stream. We are over halfway through the book. I only just noticed. Look at that. In my copy, we are on page 187 out of 264 to 65-ish. Technically, it goes to 265, but there's not very much on that page. So we have less than 100 pages to go. We've only got like 80 pages to go. How about that? Sharky saying milestones. Yeah, I didn't notice when we passed the halfway mark, but it was probably like last week. Yeah, so it's 7:12. Why don't we just get into it? Start a little earlier into the actual reading and finish a little earlier. I'm a little sleepy, a little hungry. Let's go, let's go, let's go. So, top of 187 for me. It was, as Well would have noted in his stage directions, later the same day. The sounds of hammering, as the disc theater rose from its cradle of scaffolding, thumped through Well's head and out the other side. He could remember the drinking, he was certain. And the dwarfs bought lots more rounds when Tom John did his impersonations. Then they had all gone to another bar, Thundergust knew. And then they'd gone to a Clatchian takeaway. And after that, it was just a blur. I feel like we hear about Clatchian restaurants frequently, usually Clatchian takeaway. And after that, it was just a blur. He wasn't very good at quaffing. Too much of the drink actually landed in his mouth. Judging by the taste in it, some incontinent creature of the night had also scored a direct hit. That's a disgusting line. Sharkies wonder what kinds of takeaway Clatch would have. Yeah, I'm guessing there's examples in some of the books, but I don't remember any off the top of my head. Can you do it? Said Vituller. Farmhouse is pretty sure curries have been mentioned. Quell smacked his lips to get rid of the taste. I expect, said Tom John. It sounded interesting, the way he told it. Wicked king ruling with the help of evil witches. Storms. Ghastly forests. True heir to throne in life and death struggle. Flash of dagger. Screams. Alarums. Evil king dies. Good triumphs. Bells ring out. Showers of rose petals could be arranged, said Vitoller. I know a man who can get them at practically cost. Sharky say we watched a couple of YouTube videos about the takeout cuisine in ancient Rome. I think it included some soups. Yeah, Roman nightlife sounds very interesting. Even the parts of it that aren't, pervy. They both looked at Huel, who was drumming his fingers on his stool. All three found their attention drawn to the bag of silver the fool had given Huel. Even by itself, it represented enough money to complete the disc. And there had been talk of more to follow. Patronage. That was the thing. That was the thing. You'll do it then, will you? Said Vitoler. It's got a certain something, Huel conceded. But I don't know. I'm not trying to pressure you, said Vitoler. All three pairs of eyes swiveled back to the money bag. It seems a bit fishy, Tom John conceded. Their voices, Vitoler and Tom John's, I have decided, are similar. I don't know if they're supposed to be, but that's the way it's, like father, like son. I mean, the fool is decent enough, but the way he tells it, it's very odd. His mouth says the words, and his eyes say something else. And I got the impression he'd much rather we believed his eyes. On the other hand, said Vitoler hurriedly, what harm could it do? The pay's the thing. That's twice now. Farmo says, I feel like modern-day North American takeaway is lacking for good takeout soups. Fast food soups should exist more often. Sharky say there are some street food areas preserved in Pompeii. Street food is something, I don't know. I enjoyed street food in Singapore. Or, like relatively street food, I guess. We didn't really necessarily do like carts by the road, but there were a lot of like open air shops that were, built into buildings. That were very tasty. The coffee. I don't know when I'm gonna be like comfortable going to places like the Richmond Night Market again, but I miss the Richmond Night Market as far as like going for food trucks and things. I just, just the food part of it really. But I don't know about when I'm gonna be ready to brave the crowds there. Condensation dripping off my mug. I guess the thing would be go earlier in the day to try and dodge the crowds and then get out of there earlier too. Anyways. Huel raised his head. What? He said muzzily. I said, the play's the thing. The first two times it said the pay is the thing. The pay's the thing. But that time he said the play's the thing the third time. There was silence again, except for the drumming of Huel's fingertips. The bag of silver seemed to have grown larger. In fact, it seemed to fill the room. The thing is, Vittler began, unnecessarily loudly. The way I see it, Quell began. They both stopped. After you. Sorry. It wasn't important. Go ahead. I was going to say, we could afford to build the disc anyway, said Quell. Just the shell and the stage, said Vittler, but not all the other things. Not the trapdoor mechanism or the machine for lowering gods out of heaven, or the big turntable, or the wind fans. We used to manage without all that stuff, said Quell. Remember the old days? All we had was a few planks and a bit of painted sacking. But we had a lot of spirit. If we wanted wind, we had to make it ourselves. He drummed his fingers for a while. Of course, he added quietly, we should be able to afford a wave machine. A small one. I've got this idea about a ship wrecked on an island where there's this... Sorry, Vittler shook his head. But we've had some huge audiences, said Tom John. Sure, lad, sure. But they pay in halfpennies. The artificers want silver. If we wanted to be rich men, people, he corrected hurriedly, we should have been born carpenters. Vittler shifted uneasily. I already owe Chrystophrase the Troll more than I should. Chrystophrase. Does that name get changed later? Here it's spelled Chrystophrase. In my head, I remember it without the T in there and maybe without an R. Farmo says I think it was Chrystophrase in another book. Oh, and the shark you say there says play the third time too. Didn't mute my phone. Sorry, just replying with a I'll get back to you later. The other two stared. He's the one that has people's limbs torn off, said Tom John. How much do you owe him? Said Quell. It's all right, said Vittler hurriedly. I'm keeping up the interest payments. More or less. Yes, but how much does he want? An arm and a leg. The dwarf and boy stared at him in horror. How could you have been so? I did it for you two. Tom John deserves a better stage. He doesn't want to go ruining his health, sleeping in latties, and never knowing a home. And you, my man, you need somewhere settled, with all the proper things you ought to have, like trapdoors and wave machines and so forth. You talked me into it, and I thought, they're right. It's no life out on the road, giving 2 performances a day to a bunch of farmers and going around with a hat afterward. What sort of future is that? I thought, we've got to get a place somewhere, with comfortable seats for the gentry, people who don't throw potatoes at the stage. I said, blow the cost. I just wanted you to... All right, shouted Quell. I'll write it. I'll act it, said Tom John. I'm not forcing you, mind, said Vittler. It's your own choice. That's a little sketchy, isn't it? Parmo says, praise and phrase are both spellings for the gemstone. I imagine the one with the T is maybe a typo. Maybe. Or maybe this is just early on and the character wasn't settled yet. Farmer says, I feel like that's a bit for his own peace of mind. Well frowned at the table. There were, he had to admit, some nice touches. 3 witches was good. 2 wouldn't be enough. 4 would be too many. They could be meddling with the destinies of mankind and everything. Lots of smoke and green light. You could do a lot with 3 witches. It was surprising no one had thought of it before. Sharky say, it's like a mom guilt trip. I sacrificed so much for you, but it's your choice. So, we can tell this fool that we'll do it, can we? Said Vitoller, his hand on the bag of silver. And of course, you couldn't go wrong with a good storm. And there was the ghost routine that Vitoller had cut out of Please Yourself, saying they couldn't afford the muslin? M-U-S-L-I-N. Muslin? I know it's a type of fabric. And perhaps he could put death in it too. Put death in too. Young Dafe would make a damn good death, with white makeup and platform soles. How far away did he say he'd come from? He said. The Ramtops, said the... My copy says the Ramtops, in quotation marks, and then outside, and the Playmaster. And the Playmaster? I assumed it was going to be said the Playmaster, or something, but it says the Ramtops and the Playmaster. Muslin. Muslin. Alright, muslin. Not muslin. Muslin. The Ramtops and the Playmaster. Some little kingdom no one has ever heard of. Sounds like a chest infection. Lanker? Kinda. It'd take months to get there. I'd like to go anyway, said Tom John. That's where I was born. Vitoller looked at the ceiling. Well looked at the floor. Anything was better just at that moment than looking at each other's faces. That's what you said, said the boy. When you did a tour of the mountains, you said. Yes, but I can't remember where, said Vitoller. All those little mountain towns looked the same to me. We spent more time pushing the latties across rivers and dragging them up hills than we ever did on the stage. I could take some of the younger lads and we could make a summer of it, said Tom John. Put on all the old favorites. And we could still be back by Soul Cake Day. Soul Cake Day. You could stay here and see to the theater, and we could be back for a grand opening. He grinned at his father. It'd be good for them, he said slyly. You always said some of the young lads don't know what a real acting life is like. Well's still got to write the play, Vitoller pointed out. Quell was silent. He was staring at nothing at all. After a while, one hand fumbled in his doublet and brought out a sheaf of paper, and then disappeared in the direction of his belt, and produced a small corked ink pot and a bundle of quills. They watched as, without once looking at them, the dwarf smoothed out the paper, opened the ink pot, dipped a quill, held it poised like a hawk waiting for its prey, and then began to write. Vitoller nodded at Tom John. Walking as quietly as they could, they left the room. Farmhouse thinks Soul Cake Day is supposed to be a sort of vaguely like Easter. There's maybe a soul cake duck. Sharkies thought soul cakes were more a winter thing, but that could just be based off one old Xmas carol. I imagine that Discworld soul cakes are separate from any Earth soul cakes. Around mid-afternoon, they took up a tray of food and a bundle of paper. The tray was still there at tea time. The paper had gone. Buck Spurs and Booze just saw a drawing tonight that referenced soul cakes. That's an odd coincidence. I think it was around autumn. I know some people that are like this, hyperfixation on whatever art project is in front of them, forgetting to do anything else, including eat or go to the bathroom or sleep or whatever. A few hours later, a passing member of the company reported hearing a yell of, "It can't work! It's back to front!" and the sound of something being thrown across the room. Sarky say we can both get in that zone. Around supper, Vitoller heard a shouted request for more candles and fresh quills. Tom John tried to get an early night, but sleep was murdered by the sound of creativity from the next room. There were mutterings about balconies and whether the world really needed wave machines. The rest was silence, except for the insistent scratching of quills. Eventually, Tom John dreamed. "Now, have we got everything this time?" "Yes, Granny." "Light the fire, Magrat." "Yes, Granny." "Right. Let's see now." "I wrote it all down, Granny." "I can read, my girl. Thank you very much. Now what's this? Round about the cauldron go, in the poisoned entrails throw. What are these supposed to be?" "Our Jason slaughtered a pig yesterday, Esme." "These look like perfectly good shitterlings to me, Githa. There's a couple of decent meals in them, if I'm any judge." "Please, Granny?" "There's plenty of starving people in Clatch who wouldn't turn up their nose at 'em. That's all I'm saying." All right. Whole grain wheat and lentils too, in the cauldron seethe and stew. What happened to the toad?" "Please, Granny, you're slowing it down. You know Goody was against all unnecessary cruelty. Vegetable protein is a perfectly acceptable substitute." "That means no newt or fenny snake either, I suppose?" "No, Granny." "Or tiger's chaudron?" "Here." "What the hell's this? Excuse my Clatchian." "It's a tiger's chaudron." Oh, nope. These aren't labeled with who's saying what, so I don't figure some of them out until it's too late. "Or tiger's chaudron?" "Here." "What the hell's this? Excuse my Clatchian." It's a tiger's children. Our Wayne bought it off a merchant from foreign parts. You sure? Our Wayne asked special this, me? Looks like any other children to me. Oh well. Double hubble, stubble trouble. Fire burn and cauldron bub. Why isn't the cauldron bubbling, Magrat? Okay, let's see. I missed some posts here. Farmo says the soul cake duck is the Easter. Is like the Easter bunny and lays chocolate eggs. And they do roll eggs down a hill as part of it. So sort of a cross between the two holidays. Bookspurs and Brew says, it was Sowain. Farma says, there we go, that makes sense. Sharky say, interesting because in Sweden, at Easter, kids do something like trick-or-treating, but they all dress up like Easter witches and go door to door for goodies. Huh. I've never heard that one before. Sharky say, weird that there are so many intersections between Easter and Halloween. Alright, let's see. Tom John awoke, shivering. The room was dark. Outside, a few stars pierced the mists of the city, and there was the occasional whistle of burglars and footpads as they went about their strictly lawful occasions. There was silence from the next room, but he could see the light of a candle under the door. He went back to bed. Across the Turgid? Turgid? We've definitely done this one before. I think during this book, maybe. Although it may have been guards. Jid. Across the turgid river, the fool had also awakened. Oh, Farmos thinks it was actually in Queen of Sorcery. Oh, in Nyssa. In Sthis-Tor. The fool had also awakened. He was staying in the Fool's Guild. Not out of choice, but because the Duke hadn't given him any money for anything else, and getting to sleep had been difficult in any case. The chilly walls had brought back too many memories. Besides, if he listened hard, he could hear the muted sobs and occasional whimpers from the students' dormitories as they contemplated with horror the life that lay ahead of them. He punched the rock-hard pillow and sank into a fitful sleep, perchance to dream. Slab and grew, yes, but it doesn't say how slab and grew. Goody Whemper recommended testing a bit in a cup of cold water, like toffee. How inconvenient that we didn't think to bring one, Magrat. I think we should be getting on, Esme. The night's nearly gone. Just don't blame me if it doesn't work properly, that's all. Let's see. Baboon hair and... Who's got the baboon hair? Oh, thank you, Githa. Though it looks more like cat hair to me, but never mind. Baboon hair and mandrake root. And if that's real mandrake, I'm very surprised. Carrot juice and tongue of boot. I see. A little humor, I suppose. Please hurry. All right, all right. Owl hoot and glowworm glimmer. Boil, and then allow to simmer. I don't know. And then allow to simmer. That's good. I like that. You know, Esme, this doesn't taste half bad. You're not supposed to drink it, you daft doyen. Tom John sat bolt upright in bed. That was them again. The same faces, the bickering voices, distorted by time and space. Even after he looked out the window, where fresh daylight was streaming through the city, he could still hear the voices grumbling into the distance, like old thunder fading away. I, for one, didn't believe it about the tongue of boot. It's still very runny. Do you think we should put some cornflour into it? It won't matter. Either he's on his way, or he isn't. He got up and doused his face in the wash basin. Silence rolled in swaths from Hwell's room. Tom John slipped on his clothes and pushed open the door. It looked as though it had snowed indoors. Great heavy flakes that had drifted into odd corners of the room. Hwell sat at his low table in the middle of the floor, his head pillowed on a pile of paper, snoring. Tom John tiptoed across the room and picked up a discarded ball of paper at random. He smoothed it out and read, King. Now, I'm just going to put the crown on this bush here, and you will tell me if anyone tries to take it, won't you? Groundlings. Yes. King. Now, if I could just find my horsey. First assassin pops up behind rock. Audience. Behind you! First assassin disappears. King. You're trying to play tricks on old Kingy, you naughty. Is this a reference to something that I'm just not getting? There was a lot of crossing out and a large blot. Tom John threw it aside and selected another ball at random. I don't know how I'm going to read this out loud. I feel like I should do this so you can all see what I'm reading, because I like down here at the bottom, we've got bits crossed out and says, King, is this a duck knife? That's crossed out. Dagger, I see. And then crossed out, we've got behind, beside, in front of. Before me, it's beak, crossed out. Handle, pointing at me, crossed out. My hand. This is not meant to be read aloud. What am I supposed to do with this? There we go. Is this a duck knife? Dagger, I see. Behind, beside, in front of. Before me, it's beak. Handle, pointing at me. My hand. First murderer. I'faith, it is not so. Crossed out. Oh no, it isn't. Second murderer. Thou speakest truth, sire. Crossed out. Oh yes, it is. Farmos thinks it's not supposed to be duck knife, it's supposed to be duck and knife separately. Oh, I'm way out of focus now, everyone. I'm so sorry. Judging by the creases... Oh, God, we've got more crossed out bits ahead. Judging by the creases in the paper, this one had been thrown at the wall particularly hard. Well had once explained to Tom John his theory about inspirations, and by the look of it, a whole shower had fallen last night. Fascinated by this insight into the creative processes, however, Tom John tried a third discarded attempt. Can you not do that? Come on. Hey, focus up. Audience, let's try fully blacking it out and then, whoa. Nope, didn't do it. Oh well, it'll figure it out eventually. A third discarded attempt. Queen. Faith, there is a sound without. Mayhap it is my husband returning. Quick, into the garderobe, and wait not upon the order of your going. Murderer. Marry, but your maid still has my pantoufles. Pantoufles. Maid, opening door. The Archbishop, your Majesty. Priest, under bed. Bless my soul. Diverse alarums. Okay, I'm going to close this for a moment. Just let it do its thing. I'm still here, don't worry, even though the screen's dark. I still exist. Opening it back up, and we're still out of focus. Alright, well, that's... Farmo says, pantoufles? Pantoufles. 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 Tom John wondered vaguely what divers alarums, diversalarums, what divers alarums, which well always included somewhere in the stage directions, actually were. Well always refused to say. Perhaps they referred to dangerous depths or lack of air pressure? He sidled toward the table and, with great care, pulled the sheaf of paper from under the sleeping dwarf's head, lowering it gently onto a cushion. The top sheet read, we've got more crossed out, looks like Vereni or Verence. Verence Felmet Small God's Eve is crossed out. A knight of, crossed out, knives, daggers, kings, comma, by, comma, quell of Vitoller's men, a, comedy is crossed out, tragedy in 8563, all crossed out, 9 acts. Characters. Felmet, a good king. Verence, a bad king. Witherwax, an evil witch. Wet, Wetherwax. Weatherwax has become Wetherwax, an evil witch. Hog, an likewise evil witch. Magirat, an siren. Tom John flicked over the page. Scene. Then crossed out we've got a drawing room, ship at sea, street in Pseudopolis. Blasted moor. Enter 3 witches. Apparently the pantoufle is French for slippers. The boy read for a while, and then turned to the last page. Gentles, leave us dance and sing, and wish good health unto the king. Exeunt all, singing fa la la, etc. Shower of rose petals, ringing of bells, gods descend from heaven, demons rise from hell, much ado with turntable, etc. The end. Chucky say, I love how this book looks back on itself. Okay, one more time. This time I'm going to try the gradual. I thought it was working. Oh, there we go. Hey, I don't know at what point it figured it out, but I'm back in focus, baby. It felt like the appropriate thing to say there. Chunky say, yay! Sorry, I have nothing set up on this channel. Books, brews and booze. No commands, nothing. I do not know the Twitch savviness to set all that up. I do not know the Twitch savviness. Yeah. I said it, and we'll pretend it made sense. Quell snored. In his dreams, gods rose and fell. Ships moved with cunning and art across canvas oceans. Pictures jumped and ran together and became flickering images. Men flew on wires, flew without wires. Great ships of illusion fought against one another in imaginary skies. Seas opened. Ladies were sawn in half. 1,000 special effects men giggled and gibbered. Gibbered? I think both are good. Through it all, he ran with his arms open in desperation, knowing that none of this really existed, or ever would exist, and all he really had was a few square yards of planking, some canvas, and some paint on which to trap the beckoning images that invaded his head. Only in our dreams are we free. The rest of the time we need wages. It's a good play, said Vitoller, apart from the ghost. The ghost stays, said Quell sullenly. But people always jeer and throw things. Anyway, you know how hard it is to get all the chalk dust out of the clothes. The ghost stays. It's a dramatic necessity. You said it was a dramatic necessity in the last play. Well, it was. And in Please Yourself, and in A Wizard of Ankh, and the rest of them. I like ghosts. They stood to one side and watched the dwarf artificers assembling the wave machine. It consisted of 6 long spindles, covered in complex canvas spirals painted in shades of blue and green and white, and stretching the complete width of the stage. An arrangement of cogs and endless belts led to a treadmill in the wings. When the spirals were all turning at once, people with weak stomachs had to look away. Sea battles, breathed Quell. Shipwrecks, tritons, pirates. Squeaky bearings, laddie, groaned Vitoller, shifting his weight on his stick. Maintenance expenses, overtime. It does look extremely intricate, Quell admitted. Who designed it? A daft old chap in the Street of Cunning Artificers, said Vitoller. Leonard of Quirm. He's a painter, really. He just does this sort of thing for a hobby. I happen to hear that he's been working on this for months. I just snapped it up quick when he couldn't get it to fly. Leonard of Quirm. Not currently in the Patrician's dungeon, so that, I think, cements this. in a certain time period. They watched the mock waves turn. "You're bent on going?" said Vitoller at last.
"Yes. Tom John's still a bit wild. He needs an older head around the place."
"I'll miss you, laddie. I don't mind telling you. You've been like a son to me. How old are you exactly? I never did know."
102.
Vitoller nodded gloomily. He was 60, and his arthritis was playing him up. "You've been like a father to me, then," he said.
"It evens out in the end," said Hwell diffidently. "Half the height, twice the age. You could say that on the overall average, we live about the same length of time as humans."
The playmaster sighed. "Well, I don't know what I will do without you and Tom John around, and that's a fact."
"It's only for the summer, and a lot of the lads are staying. In fact, it's mainly the apprentices that are going. You said yourself it'd be good experience."
Armo says, "I feel like the math there is a little..." Yeah. Vitoller looked wretched, and, in the chilly air of the half-finished theater, a good deal smaller than usual, like a balloon 2 weeks after the party. He prodded some wood shavings distractedly with his stick. "We grow old, Master Hwell. At least," he corrected himself, "I grow old, and you grow older. We have heard the gongs at midnight."
"Aye. You don't want him to go, do you?"
"I was all for it at first, you know. Then I thought, there's destiny afoot. Just when things are going well, there's always bloody destiny. I mean, that's where he came from, somewhere up in the mountains. Now fate is calling him back. I shan't see him again."
"It's only for the summer."
Vitoller held up a hand. "Don't interrupt. I'd got the right dramatic flow there."
"Sorry."
Flick, flick, went the stick on the wood shavings, knocking them into the air. "I mean, you know he's not my flesh and blood."
"He's your son, though," said Hwell. "This hereditary business isn't all it's cracked up to be."
"It's fine of you to say that."
"I mean it. Look at me. I wasn't supposed to be writing plays. Dwarfs aren't even supposed to be able to read. I shouldn't worry too much about destiny, if I was you. I was destined to be a miner. Destiny gets it wrong half the time."
"But you said he looks like the fool person. I can't see it myself, mark you."
"The light's got to be right."
"Could be some destiny at work there." Sharky say, wouldn't be the first time someone traveled for a summer job and decided to stay there. Stay after. Hwell shrugged. Destiny was funny stuff, he knew. You couldn't trust it. Often you couldn't even see it. Just when you knew you had it cornered, it turned out to be something else. Coincidence, maybe, or providence. You barred the door against it, and it was standing behind you. Then, just when you thought you had it nailed down, it walked away with the hammer. He used destiny a lot. As a tool for his plays, it was even better than a ghost. There was nothing like a bit of destiny to get the old plot rolling. But it was a mistake to think you could spot the shape of it. And as for thinking it could be controlled, Granny Weatherwax. Oh, look at that. Haven't seen them really for a bit, other than in dreams. Granny Weatherwax squinted irritably into Nanny Ogg's crystal ball. It wasn't a particularly good one, being a greenish glass fishing float brought back from foreign seaside parts by one of her sons. It distorted everything, including, she suspected, the truth. "He's definitely on his way," she said at last. "In a cart." "A fiery white charger would have been favourite," said Nanny Ogg. "You know, caparisoned and that." "Has he got a magic sword?" said Magrat, craning to see. Granny Weatherwax sat back. "You're a disgrace, the pair of you," she said. "I don't know. Magic chargers, fiery swords, ogling away like a couple of milkmaids." "A magic sword is important," said Magrat. "You've got to have one." "We could make him one," she added wistfully, "out of thunderbolt iron. I've got a spell for that. You take some thunderbolt iron," she said uncertainly, "and then you make a sword out of it." Again, some themes here that get repeated in Guards with Carrot.
"I can't be having with that old stuff," said Granny. "You can wait days for the damn things to hit, and then they nearly take your arm off."
"And a strawberry birthmark," said Nanny Ogg, ignoring the interruption. The other two looked at her expectantly. "A strawberry birthmark," she repeated. "It's one of those things you got to have if you're a prince coming to claim your kingdom. That's so everyone will know. Of course, I don't know how they know it's strawberry."
"Can't abide strawberries,"
said Granny vaguely, quizzing the crystal again. Pharma says, "Ah, yes, you can tell she knows her sword making." In its cracked green depths, smelling of bygone lobsters, a minute Tom John kissed his parents, shook hands or hugged the rest of the company, and climbed aboard the leading laddie. Pharma says, "The snosberry birthmarks taste like snosberries." It must have worked, she told herself, else he wouldn't be coming here, would he? All those others must be his trusty band of good companions. After all, common sense. He's got to come 500 miles across difficult country. Anything could happen. I dare say the armor and swords is in the carts. She detected a twinge of doubt, and set out to quell it instantly. There isn't any other reason for him to come, stands to reason. We got the spell exactly right. Except for the ingredients. And most of the poetry. And it probably wasn't the right time. And Githa took most of it home for the cat, which couldn't have been proper. But he's on his way. What can't speak can't lie. "Best put the cloth over it when you've done, Esme," said Nanny. "I always get worried someone'll peer in at me when I'm having my bath." Reminds me of some post I'd seen about someone who had purchased a crystal ball, and the seller had said, make sure when you're not using it to cover it up with a cloth. And the person buying it was like, to charge the energies, for reasons like that. No, so it doesn't burn your house down if the sunlight hits it. Sharky saying, "It's not a cell phone."
He's on his way, said Granny, the satisfaction in her voice so strong you could have ground corn with it. She dropped the black velvet bag over the ball.
It's a long road, said Nanny. There's many a slip twixt dress and drawers. There could be bandits.
We shall watch over him, said Granny.
That's not right. If he's going to be king, he ought to be able to fight his own battles, said Magrat.
We don't want him to go wasting his strength, said Nanny primly. We want him good and fresh for when he gets here.
And then, I hope, we shall leave him to fight his battles in his own way, said Magrat. Granny clapped her hands together in a business-like fashion.
Quite right, she said, provided he looks like winning.
They had been meeting at Nanny Ogg's cottage. Magrat made an excuse to tarry after Granny left, around dawn, allegedly to help Nanny with tidying up. Whatever happened to not meddling? She said.
What do you mean?
You know, Nanny.
It's not proper meddling, said Nanny awkwardly. Just helping matters along.
Surely you can't really think that.
I do think that, and don't call me Shirley.
She doesn't say that. Nanny sat down and fidgeted with a cushion.
Well, see, all this not meddling business is fine in the normal course of things, she said. Not meddling is easy when you don't have to. And then I've got the family to think about. Our Jason's been in a couple of fights because of what people have been saying. Our Sean was thrown out of the army. The way I see it, when we get the new king in, he should owe us a few favors. It's only fair.
But only last week you were saying... Magrat stopped, shocked at this display of pragmatism.
A week is a long time in magic, said Nanny. 15 years for one thing. Anyway, Esme is determined and I'm in no mood to stop her.
So what you're saying, said Magrat icily, is that this not meddling thing is like taking a vow not to swim. You'll absolutely never break it, unless of course you happen to find yourself in the water?
Better than drowning,
Nanny said. Booksperson Boo says, dang it, because that is the best joke ever. What, the Shirley one? Well, it's not mine. She reached up to the mantelpiece and took down a clay pipe that was like a small tar pit. She lit it with a spill from the remains of the fire, while Grebo watched her carefully from his cushion. Magrat idly lifted the hood from the ball and glared at it. I think, she said, that I will never really understand about witchcraft. Just when I think I've got a grip on it, it changes.
We're all just people.
Nanny blew a cloud of blue smoke at the chimney.
Everyone's just people.
Can I borrow the crystal? Said Magrat suddenly.
Feel free,
said Nanny. She grinned at Magrat's back.
Had a row with your young man, she said.
I really don't know what you're talking about.
Haven't seen him around for weeks.
Oh, the Duke sent him to... Magrat stopped and went on. Sent him away for something or other. Not that it bothers me at all, either way.
So I see. Take the ball, by all means.
Magrat was glad to get back home. No one was about on the moors at night anyway, but over the last couple of months, things had definitely been getting worse. On top of the general suspicion of witches, it was dawning on the few people in Lancre who had any dealings with the outside world that A. either more things had been happening than they had heard about before, or B. time was out of joint. It wasn't easy to prove, footnote, but the few traders who came along the mountain tracks after the winter seemed to be rather older than they should have been. So, it wasn't easy to prove, footnote. Because of the way time was recorded among the various states, kingdoms, and cities. After all, when over an area of 100 square miles, the same year is variously the year of the small bat, and anticipated monkey, the hunting cloud, fat cows, 3 bright stallions, and at least 9 numbers recording the time since, footnote, footnote, assorted kings, prophets, and strange events were either crowned, born, or happened, and each year has a different number of months, and some of them don't have weeks, and one of them refuses to accept the day as a measure of time, the only thing it is possible to be sure of is that good sex doesn't last long enough. Third footnote. Okay, let's go backwards a bit. At least 9 numbers recording the time since, secondary footnote. The calendar of the Theocracy of Mundhab counts down, not up. No one knows why, but it might not be a good idea to hang around and find out. End of secondary footnote. Now, tertiary footnote. We've got, let's see. The only thing it is possible to be sure of is that good sex doesn't last long enough. Tertiary footnote. Except for the Zambingo tribe of the Great Neff, of course. End of footnotes. So, that was all off of It Wasn't Easy to Prove. Few traders who came along the mountain tracks after the winter seemed to be rather older than they should have been. Unexplained happenings were always more or less expected in the Ramtops because of the high magical potential, but several years disappearing overnight was a bit of a first. She locked the door, fastened the shutters, and carefully laid the green glass globe on the kitchen table. She concentrated. Okay. Sharky say, the real history of the switch in Western Europe from the Julian calendar to the Gregorian reads a little like that. Different countries changed at different times. Farmo says that was a maze. Sharky say, so at any given point, it could be a different day depending on which country you were in. I mean, technically that's still true of Earth, depending on which time zone you're in. But probably not in the same way or the same proximity. Well, it's 8:15, and we are changing scenes here. Let's finish off this page, because it does seem like this next scene. So, the fool dozed under the tarpaulins of the river barge. In case you didn't know, a tarp, is just short for tarpaulin. The fool dozed under the tarpaulins of the river barge, heading up the Unk at a steady 2 miles an hour. It wasn't an exciting method of transport, but it got you there, eventually. He looked safe enough. but he was tossing and turning in his sleep. Magrat wondered what it was like, spending your whole life doing something you didn't want to do. Like being dead, she considered, only worse. The reason being, you are alive to suffer it. She considered the fool to be weak, badly led, and sorely in need of some backbone. And she was longing for him to get back, so she could look forward to never seeing him again. Charcuze alive in a box. Alright, that's where I think I'm going to stop. Because that is actually another scene break. So yeah, we finished off there with... I feel like many of the Discworld books will have footnotes like that. Not frequently in said books, but usually, like, I don't know, once a book or so where you've got like footnote, footnote, footnote. It helps a little in some later books where he starts numbering the footnotes. I say helps, but that also means that he can have multiple footnotes on a page. I mean, I guess here he did that just with asterisks. Multiple asterisks to indicate which one, but later on it just goes, 1, 2, 3 for the footnotes in later books. They're a little easier when you aren't reading them out loud, the footnotes like that. But not a lot. You still need to kind of like backtrack and reread things to figure out what's talking about what, when, and where. Easier to read out loud the multiple footnotes than the crossed out bits. Again, I'm curious how the like professional audiobooks handle things like that. Do they just like rewrite those sentences to say, to like phrase them differently, to be like, this is what it read, but there were multiple bits crossed out, or something? I don't know. Just parts of these books, parts of this book in particular, are just not meant to be read aloud. Which is interesting. You don't often see authors play with the written format like that in novels. I can't think of very many other examples. You get that sort of thing maybe more often in like graphic novels, comics, things like that. But in just novels, I feel like you don't see that sort of thing very often. Sharky say, definitely sometimes it's easier for the mind to juggle more things at once than out loud. Implications in English that suit writing more than speech. It is, I don't know. Yeah, an interesting way to play with the format of a novel. Well, I think that's a good place to call it. I've got a busy day tomorrow. Going to visit my mom. She is in the hospital right now, out in Chilliwack, so some driving, and then for a few days after that, gonna be, self-isolating, just because, Starkey say, Lewis Carroll used to play with the written word as much, though in different ways. There are parts that don't read the same out loud as they look. That's interesting. As familiar as I am with quotes and things from Carol, I haven't actually read much of it myself. Some poems, I suppose, but... Anyways, I see that... Oh, Farmer says, I remember reading Alice in Wonderland and being like, ah, this person has really studied English and how absurd it is. I see that Slightly Stupid Bear is streaming, playing some Deep Rock Galactic, the old space dwarf mining game. So I think he's only got eight people in his stream right now. So why don't we raid over to him? So I'll set that up, and then yeah, hopefully everyone has a lovely weekend. I should be back here next Wednesday. And we'll continue on and we'll get even closer. We really don't have much to go on this book at this point. Gonna have to start thinking about what's next. Sharky say, hope my mom gets better soon. Yeah, I hope so too. Thanks, everyone. Alright. Well, have a good weekend. And I'll see you next week. Bye-bye. Good night. Happy Friday. Happy weekend.